Chapter 20. During dinner, Ning wished she could bury her face in her rice bowl, because Luo Jianyang was sitting directly across from her. She really didn't have the courage to meet his gaze. If she hadn't been starving, she wouldn't have come to eat at all. Watching her shove spoonfuls of plain rice into her mouth, Luo Jianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. Without a word, he reached out and gently pushed a dish closer to her. Hearing the movement, Ning glanced down. After a brief hesitation, she quickly reached out with her chopsticks, grabbed a bit of food, and dropped it into her bowl, then resumed her silent, head-down eating spree. Luo Jianyang, he looked helpless, his gaze fixed on the dish like he was at a loss for what to do. Noticing the subtle tension, the principal blinked and suddenly chuckled. Xiaowen, when Xiao Luo heard you were coming today, he actually calculated the time and came to pick you up with our teachers, because he knew the mountain roads would be hard for you. Hearing the principal refer to Luo Jianyang as Xiao Luo, Ning nearly choked on her rice. She chewed slowly, muffled a vague response, and kept her head down. Seeing that she didn't react more strongly, the principal shook his head with a sigh, as if disappointed but helpless. Luo Jianyang didn't say anything else either. After glancing at Ning a few more times, he followed her lead, head lowered, eating in complete silence. The meal carried an unmistakable awkwardness, especially after the village head left midway. After finishing her meal, Ning picked up the bowls and chopsticks and headed toward the sink. Just as she was about to start washing, Luo Jianyang, who had been quiet all along, spoke. The water's cold. Let me do it. And Ning froze. Her fingers stiffened around the dishes. She blinked rapidly, flustered. It's okay. I already started. You should go rest. But that voice came closer. Then let me help. The moment the words left his mouth, Luo Jianyang was already standing beside her. He took the bowl right out of her hands. And Ning felt like she couldn't breathe properly. She hadn't yet figured out how to face him, or how to explain those confession posts in her moments. They were just a fangirl's way of admiring her idol, weren't they? Not explaining is awkward. But explaining? That's even worse. Yet keeping things this awkward forever felt unbearable too. I can explain the WeChat thing, Luo Jianyang suddenly said. His voice was soft, barely audible over the sound of running water, but it cut through to her ears with startling clarity. And Ning's heart skipped a beat. She blurted, I can explain that post too. What I meant wasn't what you think. That kind of expression is part of a special online system. Like when I say I'm so tired I'm going bald, it doesn't mean I'm actually going bald. It's just exaggerated, a figure of speech. Luo Jianyang paused mid-motion, then slowly raised his eyes to look at her, his expression somewhere between surprised and amused. That look made Ning want to bite off her own tongue. What the hell am I even saying? I understand, Luo Jianyang said calmly. And Ning let out a long, invisible sigh of relief. Thank God. It's finally cleared up. But in the next second, Luo Jianyang said something that made her feel like she had stepped right into a dream. And Ning, I like you. Her ears buzzed. For a moment, she wasn't even sure this was reality. Maybe she'd fallen into an incredibly vivid dream. Did Luo Jianyang just say he likes her? They'd only met a handful of times. She could count them on one hand. And yet he said he liked her? Don't tell me this is love at first sight. She didn't believe in love at first sight. And even if such a thing existed, it couldn't possibly happen to her. Not when the entertainment industry was packed with stunning, extraordinary women. Don't joke like that, she said stiffly, forcing a smile. It's already freezing today. If you keep going with these cold jokes, I'm going to turn into a popsicle. She didn't need a mirror to know her smile looked more tragic than cheerful. Chapter 21. I wasn't joking. Luo Jianyang looked at Ning with unwavering seriousness. His pitch-black eyes deepened, as though they were pulling her into them. Why else would I leave my contact information in that email asking you to come to my company, yet never tell you who I really was when we talked? And Ning, so it was love at first sight? She hadn't just crashed into Luo Jianyang's car, she'd also crashed straight into his heart? Anyone else would find that hard to believe, right? And Ning. Luo Jianyang spoke again, his gaze locked onto hers, brimming with sincerity. I know exactly what I'm saying. This isn't a joke. I really do want to be with you. I've never dated anyone before, but I'm the kind of man who takes responsibility. And Ning was stunned. Luo Jianyang had never dated anyone? Her thoughts skipped again. What a coincidence. Neither had she. I was planning to tell you all this later, he continued with a slightly sheepish smile. Didn't want to scare you off, but life rarely follows the plan. And Ning really needed time to process what was happening. Her idol, and now boss, had just confessed to her while they stood beside a dishwashing sink in a mountain village. Boom, a clap of thunder ripped through the night sky, accompanied by a blinding flash of lightning. And then, rain. Heavy, blinding rain. And Ning, well, that's that. Now she was really stuck here with Luo Jianyang. The wind howled outside. Inside, silence reigned. And Ning sat on a small stool, hands clenched, staring out at the rain that had already blurred the windows into a milky fog. She seemed quiet on the surface, but inside, her thoughts were thundering just like the storm. I didn't say all this to pressure you into giving me an answer, Luo Jianyang spoke again. His voice was gentle and measured, as if he didn't want his confession to burden her. You can just think of it as giving me a chance to pursue you. You'll have time to get to know me. And Ning, this must be what people mean when they say they're lucky to the point of feeling dazed. Yes, she liked Luo Jianyang. That much was true. But taking that affection and turning it into a real romantic relationship, that terrified her. Once they crossed that line, there would be no going back. If it didn't work out, she wouldn't just be heartbroken, she'd lose her idol too. It would be a double blow. And Ning took a deep breath and said, let's not talk about pursuing anyone. Let's just get to know each other naturally. I mean, being your fan and your employee, I'm already pretty content with that. We don't have to force a romantic outcome. Let's just let things happen. When she finished speaking, she saw Luo Jianyang's eyes widen slightly. The faint light in them shimmered, part anticipation, part joy. Okay, he said softly. And then, both of them smiled. And Ning blushed faintly and glanced at Luo Jianyang, who was standing a few steps away. She rubbed her hands together awkwardly. Can we change the subject? This is still a little awkward, Luo Jianyang asked. What do you want to talk about? Her eyes lit up instantly. She had always wondered why Luo Jianyang didn't have a public social media account. Every time she wanted to check his updates, she had to stalk his fan club. Why don't you have a public social media account? Luo Jianyang raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at his lips. Because when I'm not filming, I spend most of my time reading at home. My life's kind of boring, I never know what to post, so I just let my team handle it. And Ning blinked. Luo Jianyang's life was even simpler than she'd imagined. Chapter 22. Seeing that Ning didn't seem particularly interested, her gaze even wandering a little, Luo Jianyang started to wonder if he had once again killed the mood. A man who had achieved so much in his career was, when it came to feelings, nothing more than a clueless novice. He pressed his lips together, thoughts spinning for a way to lighten the atmosphere. Eventually, he settled on one. With a subtle lift of his brow, Luo Jianyang said, "Want to see a magic trick?" And Ning's eyes widened, a glimmer of surprise lighting them up. Luo Jianyang knew magic tricks? Sure. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin, then rolled up his sleeves, revealing pale but clearly defined forearms. His gaze locked onto Ning's brightening eyes, and he said with a small smile, "Watch closely, don't blink." Seconds later, the coin he'd been holding between his fingers suddenly vanished. The next instant, Luo Jianyang blew lightly on his fingertips, two coins appeared as if by magic. And Ning, she knew magic tricks were just sleight of hand. But somehow, when Luo Jianyang did it, it felt like real magic. "How did you do that?" He flipped the coins in his hand. The crisp ding of metal clinking echoed through his deep, pleasant voice. "You hold the coin between your fingers. The trick is to move fast, really fast." And Ning clapped supportively. "That sounds easy, but I know I'd never be able to pull it off." Her innocent expression made Luo Jianyang laugh. He stepped closer, holding the coins between his fingers and giving them a playful shake. "If you want to learn, practice with these." And Ning hesitated for a moment, then took the coins from between his fingers. They were still warm with his body heat. Her heart skipped a beat. "I'll give it a try. And if I fail, I'll just use them to buy candy." Luo Jianyang chuckled but said nothing. He turned toward the window. The rain hadn't stopped. Thunder rolled now and then through the clouds. No one knew when it would finally end. But inside the little house, protected from the downpour, there was no sense of unease. Though the room was silent, both of them were thinking the same thing. They kind of hoped the rain would last just a little longer. When Ning woke up, the sky had just begun to lighten. The heavy rain had lasted until the early hours of the morning. As soon as it stopped, the principal arrived, offering to take her and Luo Jianyang to stay at a villager's house. But it was already too late. Neither of them wanted to trouble anyone, so they politely declined. Instead, they each spent the night in their respective cars. But even the most spacious car couldn't compare to a bed. And Ning barely slept the whole night, drifting in and out of uneasy dreams. Now that it was morning, she decided there was no point in trying to sleep anymore. She grabbed her toiletries and stepped out, planning to freshen up and shake off the fatigue. Mountain water in late autumn was biting cold. The moment Ning dipped her fingers beneath the flowing stream, a chill shot straight up her spine. She gasped and pulled back instinctively, wondering if she should collect some water and let the car's heater warm it up. Then, soft footsteps behind her. A warm voice broke through the chilly morning air with gentle clarity. "When I saw you weren't in the car, I guessed you were probably awake. I boiled some hot water, use that instead." Her eyes lit up, and she quickly dabbed at the corners of her eyes before turning around. Luo Jianyang stood there, smiling at her. The warmth in his expression was like golden autumn sunlight, bright, but no longer out of reach. And Ning smiled back. And just like that, her heart stirred again, sweet and uncontrollable, like ripples spreading gently from the center. Chapter 23. That morning, Ning spent nearly all her time with Luo Jianyang. Together, they helped the principal with various tasks and even took on the role of dorm supervisors, waking the children up. Though they didn't speak much, every time their eyes met, they exchanged quiet smiles. After a busy morning, once the children were settled into their classes, Ning and Luo Jianyang bid farewell to the principal. Their presence, after all, was a distraction. The kids wouldn't be able to focus with them around. Besides, staying too long would only create more trouble for the principal and others. Resources were limited in this place. To ensure a smooth return, Luo Jianyang had his assistant drive Ning's car out of the muddy mountain road, while he drove behind them in his own vehicle. Last night's rain had made the road even more difficult to navigate, and Ning couldn't help but keep glancing in the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with concern as she watched Luo Jianyang's car follow behind. "Don't worry, missin," the assistant said with a chuckle. "Brother Luo's an experienced driver. He's following us in case we run into any trouble." His words made Ning suddenly realize how obvious her concern for Luo Jianyang must have been. So obvious, in fact, that others could see it plainly. She cleared her throat and awkwardly changed the topic. "So, how long have you worked with him?" The assistant laughed cheerfully. "I've been by his side since he debuted. He's really a great guy, missin. Being with him is something you won't regret." Startled by the sudden shift in the conversation, Ning's cheeks flushed pink. Her heart thumped faster. "Don't joke like that." "How is it a joke?" The assistant grinned wider. "I've been with Brother Luo for years. I've never seen him care about anyone like this before. Just give it time, you'll see. And don't be too quick to turn him down, he's someone worth liking." And Ning said nothing more. Her heart was pounding so wildly, it felt like it might leap out of her chest. The assistant's few casual remarks had stirred her emotions, making her feel as shaken as the bumpy ride down the mountain road. Only when the car finally reached the flat highway and came to a gradual stop did her nerves begin to settle. She grabbed a spare bottle of water from the car and handed it to the assistant with a smile. "I don't have much to thank you with right now, so here's some water. When we're back in the city, dinner's on me." The assistant didn't refuse, joking, "Water's more than enough, missin. No need to treat me. If you're going to treat someone, treat Brother Luo." As he spoke, Luo Jianyang had already stepped out of his car behind them and was walking over. He bent slightly and tapped gently on Ning's window. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm golden light that poured over Luo Jianyang's figure. The glow outlined his sharp features, making him appear almost unreal in his handsomeness. And Ning stared for a moment, dazed by the sight, before finally snapping back to her senses and hastily rolling down the window. "I've got a lot of free time coming up," Luo Jianyang said casually, eyes twinkling. "If you're not too busy, how about you pencil me in, so I can finally treat you to that dinner I owe you?" Her gaze flickered, and Luo Jianyang's look only grew more intense. How about I treat you instead? You've helped me so much these past couple of days. Then let's do both, he said, smile deepening. I'll treat you once, and you treat me once. He paused, as if thinking of something, then added softly, not as your boss, and not as a celebrity with a fan. Just Luo Jianyang and Ning. Chapter 24, Home by dusk. By the time Ning got home, it was already close to evening. She should have been exhausted, tired enough to collapse straight into bed. But sleep was nowhere to be found. She clutched her phone tightly, her thoughts spinning wildly around it. Should she text Luo Jianyang on WeChat? Ask if he got home safely? And Ning sat in a tangle of indecision. 10 minutes passed. Then, with a sudden resolve lighting her eyes, she sat up, unlocked her phone, opened her chat window, and quickly typed out a line. I'm free the next 2 days. What about you? After hitting send, Ning sat cross-legged on her bed, eyes fixed on her screen, waiting for a reply. A few minutes later, she received a voice message from Luo Jianyang. Then let's make plans for the next 2 days. What time do you want to eat? And what do you feel like eating? At the very moment Luo Jianyang was sending this message, his lips curled in a faint smile as he typed. A hunch led Luo Xinglan, just walking through the door, to slow her steps and creep toward her brother. Bro, who are you texting? She asked suddenly. Startled by the voice behind him, Luo Jianyang instinctively locked his phone and turned around, defensive. Could you knock next time before you come into my room? His voice was calm, but the displeasure was clear. Luo Xinglan raised an eyebrow. Now that was suspicious. She'd barged into his room more times than she could count. He'd never reacted like this before. This was 100% guilty behavior. Narrowing her eyes, she drawled teasingly, wait, are you texting a pretty girl? Luo Jianyang's eyes flickered but didn't deny it. A very pretty one. Luo Xinglan's eyes widened in disbelief. Was he actually in love? And did he just, seriously, call her very pretty with a straight face? What kind of goddess-level beauty was his future sister-in-law going to be? Right on cue, Luo Jianyang's phone pinged with a WeChat notification. Luo Xinglan's gossip radar ignited like wildfire. She practically screamed, let me see. I want to see what my future sister-in-law looks like. Luo Jianyang frowned at the noise and shot her a glance of disdain as he turned slightly to check in Ning's reply in private. Around 7 okay? Do you like barbecue? The corners of Luo Jianyang's lips lifted in a smile. He was about to send a voice reply when, and oh wait, it's Ning? Luo Xinglan's shout was so loud it made his ears ring. Luo Jianyang turned, face suddenly serious. His eyes darkened as he uttered 3 cold syllables. Luo, Xing, Lan. Still stunned, she stared at him. So, the reason you chose Ning back then wasn't just because of her talent, but also because you liked her? Luo Jianyang didn't answer. He lowered his gaze and typed out a message back to Ning. Realizing that her brother was genuinely angry about her spying, Luo Xinglan quickly changed her tone, plastering on an apologetic smile. Don't be mad at me, bro. I'm sorry, okay? But he ignored her, walking out of the room with his phone, his mind fully absorbed in his conversation with Ning. Not one to give up, Luo Xinglan scurried after him like a shadow, chattering as she went. Bro, are you sure you know how to talk to girls? You're such a straight-laced guy. Don't kill the mood. Want me to give you a few tips on how to flirt? Luo Jianyang stopped mid-step at her words. He turned to look at her, brows faintly furrowed, a serious expression settling on his face. You're serious? He asked, his voice low. Luo Xinglan blinked, startled. It seemed, her brother was serious. Chapter 25, the day of the date. Time flew by, and soon it was the next day, Ning and Luo Jianyang's long-awaited dinner. They hadn't chatted for long last night. After exchanging a few messages, Ning had washed up and gone to bed, sleeping all the way into the afternoon. When she woke, she didn't spend too much time getting dolled up. After all, Luo Jianyang had already seen her at her most unfiltered yesterday. They had agreed to meet at a barbecue restaurant that Ning had wanted to try a month ago, but never got the chance to, thanks to the traffic accident. The place wasn't fancy, but it had private dining rooms. After confirming the time with Luo Jianyang, Ning called the restaurant to ensure everything was arranged properly and that their dinner wouldn't accidentally become tabloid news. She left home about 40 minutes early, strolling to the restaurant on foot. On the way, she even stopped by a trendy tea shop and bought 2 cups of milk tea. But when she reached the restaurant, she was stunned. It was brightly lit inside, but every table sat empty. Startled, she pushed the door open, only to be politely stopped by a server on the first floor. I'm sorry, miss. The restaurant has been reserved by a gentleman for the 6 to 8 p.m. time slot. And Ning frowned slightly. But I called yesterday and booked private room 206 on the 2nd floor. The server paused, then seemed to realize something. You must be Ms. And Ning, correct? The gentleman who reserved the entire place is Mr. Luo, the same one you arranged the reservation with. After you called us yesterday, Mr. Luo called shortly after and booked the entire restaurant for this time slot. And Ning, so yesterday, when Luo Jianyang chose this restaurant and confidently said the press wouldn't find them, he'd already decided to reserve the whole place, the server added. Mr. Luo and his sister are regulars here. Otherwise, our boss wouldn't have allowed someone to reserve the peak dinner hours. And Ning blinked in surprise. It took her a moment to find a response. Wow. This didn't quite match the low-key image of Luo Jianyang she had in her head. The server smiled. Please head upstairs, Mr. Luo is already waiting for you in room 206. As Ning turned the corner of the staircase, the lighting above her suddenly dimmed, as though something had blocked the light. Then, a warm, elegant voice drifted down to her. You're here? She looked up at the sound. There he was, Luo Jianyang, leaning casually against the wall in a simple, comfortable outfit. He always carried a gentle, composed presence. Like a refined young gentleman from a bygone era, warm and noble, the kind of grace that puts people at ease without overwhelming them. He was like a piece of fine jade. But tonight, beneath that composed exterior, Ning saw something more, a relaxed, genuine softness. softness. And that sincerity, it was even more irresistible. She didn't feel shy anymore. She no longer felt like she didn't belong in his light. Yeah, and Ning smiled, her eyes bright and clear. I brought you milk tea. She shook the drinks gently, like a kid showing off a prize. A year ago, Ning had seen a post from Luo Jianyang's official Weibo account. His team had shared this little quote, "Today my brother told me he finally understands why milk tea makes people happy." That was why she had bought the tea today, because of that single line. Looking at her now, Luo Jianyang smiled. He stepped down from the stairs and took the cup from her hand, meeting her gaze as he said, "Thank you. I really like it." Those few simple words made Ning's ears tingle. She pinched her earlobe to shake it off and quickly changed the subject. "You're welcome. Let's go order some meat. I'm starving." Chapter 26, a meal, a misstep, and a message. During the meal, Ning didn't hold back her love for meat. Like a little hamster in survival mode, she quietly munched away with puffed out cheeks, devouring plate after plate. Luo Jianyang watched her with mild astonishment as she polished off 3 entire trays by herself and still didn't look full. Smiling, he ordered a few more dishes for her. When the new plates arrived, Ning glanced at them, then pursed her lips and muttered somewhat sheepishly, "Am I eating too much?" Looking at her innocent expression, Luo Jianyang chuckled. Having a good appetite is a blessing. And Ning, why did that sound kind of off? The moment the words left his mouth, Luo Jianyang realized they didn't sound quite right either. A mental flash of Luo Xinglan warning him what not to say on a date zipped through his mind. His gaze faltered. Clearing his throat, he quickly tried to explain, "What I meant was, it's a good thing to eat well." And Ning, so she was eating a lot, then. The more Luo Jianyang tried to fix it, the more awkward it became. By the end of his explanation, even his usually composed face wore a slightly embarrassed flush. His usual emotional intelligence had completely deserted him in the face of feelings. Luo Jianyang internally berated himself for this out-of-character clumsiness. Finally, he muttered, "Sorry. What I wanted to say didn't come out right." And Ning looked at him for a few seconds, his eyes lowered, lips pressed in a slightly self-conscious line, and suddenly couldn't hold back a laugh. He was way too cute like this. "You're fine," she said with a smile. "You don't have to change the way you think just to please me. Just like I'm not going to pretend I have a tiny appetite in front of you. That way, we'll both feel comfortable. Because eating should be a relaxing thing." At her words, Luo Jianyang felt an immense sense of relief. That taut string in his heart, the one that had been tightly pulled ever since he met Ning, finally began to ease. And he suddenly realized he shouldn't try to follow Luo Xinglan's questionable dating strategies. If he truly wanted Ning to like him, he needed to let her like the real him. Only sincerity can touch the heart. He couldn't spend a lifetime using tricks. With that weight off his shoulders, Luo Jianyang relaxed visibly. His handsome, delicate features lit up again with that familiar warm smile. "You're right," he said. The dinner, which had started off cautious and polite, gradually turned easy and enjoyable. And Ning's hearty appetite actually brought out a more carefree side of Luo Jianyang as well. He ended up eating far more than his usual, disciplined portions. Spending time with her felt effortless. In her eyes, there was nothing but clarity and light, like a sunlit lake, pure and full of vitality. Luo Jianyang thought, in his otherwise dull and predictable life, Ning might be the burst of color he didn't know he needed. That night, once she was home, Ning sent Luo Jianyang a goodnight message. And he replied with a warm goodnight of his own. The tiny seed that had quietly fallen into her heart was already showing signs of rooting and growing. And Ning no longer saw herself as a fan or an employee. Now, she was just a woman, looking forward to tomorrow's dinner with a quietly blooming anticipation. But plans never quite keep up with sudden change. One of Ji Qing's variety shows had its shooting schedule moved up unexpectedly. In the middle of the night, the production team called Ning in a flurry. One of the original cast had gotten injured in their hotel and could no longer film. They urgently asked if Ji Qing could start recording earlier than planned. And Ning, shaken out of sleep, immediately contacted Ji Qing to explain the situation. 15 minutes later, she texted Luo Jianyang with deep regret. Ji Qing's variety show moved up. Our flight is at 5 a.m. tomorrow. I owe you a dinner when I get back. Chapter 27, Missed Messages and Midnight Gossip. It wasn't until Ning and Ji Qing's flight landed that Ning finally received a message from Luo Jianyang. "No worries. Stay safe." She was busy waiting for her luggage at the carousel, so she simply replied with an okay emoji and left it at that. Having just finished breakfast, Luo Jianyang felt a flicker of regret. He wasn't the kind of person who checked his phone obsessively. Unlike most people these days, who scrolled before bed, again the moment they woke up, or even while half asleep in the bathroom, he treated his phone strictly as a communication tool. Unless it rang or he needed to call someone, it usually stayed untouched. He sighed. If only he'd glanced at it last night when he got up, maybe he could have seen Ning one more time today. Meanwhile, Luo Xinglan, who had pulled an all-nighter, stumbled out of her room yawning and scratching her head, looking for something to eat. As she stepped into the dining room, the first thing she saw was Luo Jianyang staring blankly at his phone, looking absolutely dejected. Her eyes widened slowly. "Brother, what's wrong with you?" She hurried over, pulled out a chair, and sat beside him. Luo Jianyang turned to her with a flat tone. "Your idol just stole Ning away." Luo Xinglan blinked, confused. "Which idol of mine?" Luo Jianyang looked away, his expression unreadable, an obvious signal that he wasn't in the mood for conversation. After a few seconds of thought, realization dawned on Luo Xinglan. "Ji Qing. Come on, don't act like a jilted wife," she teased. "And Ning's Ji Qing's agent now. It's totally normal for her to travel with him for work." Then, without meaning to, she drove the knife a little deeper. "Besides, this is kind of your fault. You're the one who brought Ning into the company, had Aunt Jiang train her, and made her an agent." Luo Jianyang's face darkened. He let out a cold chuckle and replied, wait till mom and dad get back. I'll let them know you've been staying up all night doing non-serious things. Luo Xinglan stared at him, stunned. What kind of brother are you? He shot her a not talking to you look, picked up his phone, and walked off. Luo Xinglan. So this is what happens when a sister helps her brother flirt. He turns around and throws her under the bus. By the time Ning and Jiqing fully settled into the hotel, the sun had already dipped below the horizon. But rest wasn't in the cards yet. Ning had to coordinate with the production crew, while Jiqing needed to go through a full rehearsal. It wasn't until nearly 11 p.m. that they finally returned to their hotel room for a break. Having barely eaten all day, the two of them shamelessly ordered some late-night guilty pleasure takeout. While they waited, Jiqing lay sprawled across the couch with a face mask plastered on, her voice muffled and sluggish. I've been secretly stalking that socialite's Instagram lately. Wanna guess what I found? And Ning yawned. She was physically drained, but her brain still ran at full speed. She broke up with Fu Qinghe? Jiqing shook her head, a trace of schadenfreude in her voice. Nope. Looks like she cheated on him. And Ning raised an eyebrow. And how'd you figure that out? Jiqing grabbed her phone and tapped a few times. A moment later, and Ning's phone dinged. Check out the photo I just sent you, Jiqing said. Look how clingy she is with her friend. Practically glued to him. Based on body language psychology, those two have definitely shared some late-night confessions, and more. Chapter 28, Warnings, Wake-up calls, and an unwanted encounter. Just as Ning was about to open the photo Jiqing sent her, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Luo Jianyang. She froze for a second, then quickly tapped to view it. Good night. I'm heading to bed. Try not to stay up too late. And Ning had been planning to say goodnight to him anyway before turning in. Seeing his message made the corners of her mouth curl into a subtle smile. She replied, good night. Get some rest. She was about to open Jiqing's picture again when, without warning, the woman who had been lazily sprawled on the sofa suddenly appeared in front of her. With a teasing look and a muffled voice behind her face mask, Jiqing asked, what's with that spring-like smile? Are you dating someone? And Ning blinked, instinctively ready to deny it. But when her eyes met Jiqing's heart03 expression, her words caught in her throat. Jiqing wasn't particularly nosy when it came to Ning's personal life, but as someone who had been burned before, she offered a piece of heartfelt advice. Get to know him well before jumping into anything serious. People these days are really good at time management. And Ning chuckled and nodded. I get it. Jiqing plopped down beside her, launching into stories about her past with Fu Qinghe. But these weren't fond, nostalgic recollections. They were a sharp, unfiltered expose on how high-level jerks operate, almost like a crash course in how not to get played 101. She kept talking all the way until their takeout finally arrived. At the very end, she added, if you ever feel like something's off about him in your day-to-day interactions, there's a high chance it really is. People, men or women, tend to romanticize red flags when they're emotionally involved. Just don't let yourself get hurt. The variety show Jiqing participated in spanned only 2 days, but it was a physically demanding, large-scale outdoor shoot. Most of the time, both Jiqing and Ning were too busy to even glance at their phones. Still, every morning and night, Ning exchanged quick messages with Luo Jianyang, just simple greetings, but they brought her a quiet kind of joy. By the time the shoot wrapped and the two women were finally preparing to head back home, an unwelcome surprise was waiting for them. Fu Qinghe. They had just stepped out of the elevator with their suitcases when they ran straight into him, arm in arm with a young, stunning woman. The moment Fu Qinghe spotted them, his smile froze. His gaze darkened as he stared daggers at Jiqing and Ning. He leaned close to the woman at his side, whispered something in her ear. She gave a coy nod, then turned to shoot Jiqing a sharp, scornful glare before walking off. Neither Ning nor Jiqing had any intention of engaging with this human dumpster fire. But to their surprise, Fu Qinghe suddenly shifted demeanor, putting on a gentlemanly smile. Where are you ladies headed? I could give you a ride. Jiqing let out a cold laugh, lowered her voice, and muttered, what af *ing clown. Then, without another word, she grabbed Ning's arm and pulled her away. Fu Qinghe didn't stop them. He simply narrowed his eyes, watching them walk off. A faint, unreadable smile tugged at his lips. Once they were settled in the production van heading to the airport, Ning messaged Jiqing on WeChat, a flicker of concern in her chest. I have a feeling Fu Qinghe is going to twist this into a scandal. He might try to drag us into some kind of gossip smear. Should I tell Jiangjie? She's got more experience dealing with this stuff. We'd at least be better prepared. Jiqing replied, we're totally on the same page. But I don't think we need to trouble Jiangjie just yet. It's not a bad idea to give her a heads up, though. My plan? Let him and that socialite go at each other like rabid dogs. Let them have a taste of what it's like to get shredded by public opinion. Chapter 29, Scandal, Silence, and a late-night call. Just as Ning had predicted, it wasn't long after they landed that both she and Jiqing appeared on the trending topics list, and the buzz was only getting hotter. Hashtag Jiqing has a sugar daddy. Hashtag Ning once invited Fu Qinghe to her room, seeing the so-called dirt about themselves, and Ning and Jiqing couldn't help but laugh. It was embarrassingly obvious that someone was grasping at straws. The gossip about Jiqing's sugar daddy came from a few candid shots of her posing for fan photos with a man in a suit. Due to the camera angle, it looked like they were holding hands. There were dozens of similar photos in her fan group's gallery, courtesy of her former assistant's hobby of capturing candid moments. And Ning's rumor was even more ridiculous. The so-called chat history with Fu Qinghe had clearly been photoshopped. Fu Qinghe had the audacity to circulate this fake image through PR accounts because Ning had blocked and deleted him long ago, making it impossible for her to retrieve their real chat history. Even if someone proved the image was fake, he wouldn't face any consequences. After all, he never posted it directly. After digesting their own gossip, Ning and Jiqing exchanged a look. Jiqing smirked, calm and confident. Don't Don't worry, Fu Qinghe won't stay smug for long. And Ning knew Ji Qing wasn't the type to swallow an insult. If she said she had it handled, she definitely did. Her own feelings about Fu Qinghe were different from Ji Qing's. She wasn't itching for a public spat, she just wanted to watch him self-destruct. Ji Qing added, don't post any statements on Weibo for now. Just lie low. You don't have to tell me, and Ning replied. If I could stay quiet through that mess earlier, I can handle this. Just then, the company car that had come to pick them up slowed to a stop at the entrance to Ning's apartment complex. Dragging her suitcase out of the vehicle, Ning turned to Ji Qing and said, message me when you get home, okay? Ji Qing waved. Yeah, bye. Ning swiped her access card and stepped through the security gate. She yawned as she wheeled her suitcase along the familiar path. Suddenly, her phone rang, an urgent, insistent ringtone breaking the quiet. She paused to check the screen. Her sleepy eyes instantly lit up. Mr. Mysterious Job Recruiter. It was Luo Jianyang. Ning picked up. She didn't even get a chance to say hello before his voice, low and slightly anxious, came through the line. Hey, where are you right now? I'm walking home. Just got into the complex, she replied, continuing on her way. There was a brief pause before he asked, more carefully this time, did you see the entertainment news today? Ning knew exactly what he was referring to and chuckled softly. I did. If the leads weren't Ji Qing and me, I might have believed it. Ji Qing's PR will clarify things on her end, he said calmly, and I've already gotten in touch with the team behind the marketing account that smeared you. Don't worry, it's being handled. His tone was level and composed, but the reassurance in his words was like a soft breeze, gently stirring something inside her. That account is just doing what it's paid to do, he continued. Fu Qinghe probably offered them a high price, along with guarantees to protect them. They won't delete anything or post an apology easily, so don't waste your energy trying to fight them now. Once Fu Qinghe's skeletons are dragged out, the whole thing will fall apart, and when that happens, I'll personally hold him accountable for defamation. Chapter 30, A quiet night, a gentle light. Luo Jianyang's lips pressed into a faint line, and the flicker in his eyes gradually stilled. He knew Ning was level-headed and composed, even in the face of unexpected storms. She could think of solutions in an instant, always calm and organized. But behind that formidable calmness was a childhood paved with loneliness and cold distance, something few could ever truly imagine. A quiet heaviness settled in his chest, and Ning's maturity and composure made his heart ache. A girl like her shouldn't have to become her own hero. It's okay, don't worry, I'll take care of it. This time, there was a firmer, resolute note in Luo Jianyang's voice. He had never been someone who came across as overbearing, but his sudden conviction both warmed in Ning's heart and surprised her. Don't let my situation affect your plans, she replied gently. This really isn't as serious as it looks. Another short silence passed before Luo Jianyang spoke again, this time, switching the subject. If you haven't eaten and there's nothing in the house, just order some delivery. But don't pick anything too heavy. It'll upset your stomach. The corners of Ning's lips lifted into a soft smile. Her heart felt warm. I know. Luo Jianyang continued in that calm, caring tone. Drink some hot water before you unpack. Don't rush through things. And don't eat too fast either. And Ning replied with a smile. Okay. Don't worry about me. As they spoke, she arrived at her building's entrance. She fished out her keycard, ready to take the elevator up. I'm going into the elevator now. There's no signal inside. It's getting late anyway. You should rest too. Luo Jianyang didn't insist on staying on the call. He let out a soft chuckle and said, all right, I'll hang up then. After ending the call, the warmth in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by a hint of cold sharpness around his brows. He stared out the window at the sparse, flickering lights in the distance, then quietly picked up his phone again and dialed another number. It was past midnight when Ning finally finished unpacking. She didn't message Luo Jianyang goodnight. Instead, she stepped toward her window, framed by the apartment's soft light, and took a photo of the night sky. With her finger, she drew a heart shape near the bottom of the image. Then she posted it on her Moments feed with a short caption, a galaxy of warmth and light, good night. After finishing a few calls, Luo Jianyang opened WeChat, subconsciously hoping to see a new message notification from her. But the chat list was quiet. The only open conversation sat in silence. He checked the time, it was already past 1 a.m. He wasn't sure whether Ning was asleep or still awake, and hesitated for a long moment, wondering if he should message her anyway. Just then, a new message popped up on his screen. His pupils focused, lighting briefly, only to dim the next second. A sigh almost escaped him. He even had a fleeting urge to block whoever thought it was a good idea to message him at this hour. Bro, can you send me 2.6 yuan on Alipay? I want to round off my balance. From Luo Xinglan. With an exhausted breath, he sent the transfer. Not long after, another message from her popped up. Since you're still awake, can you like my new post on Moments? Just posted it. He inhaled deeply and tapped into the feed. But the moment his screen refreshed, the tightness in his brows disappeared completely. A soft light returned to his eyes, like a lone star suddenly brightening a quiet, vast sky. Because right beneath Luo Xinglan's update was Ning's post. Luo Jianyang smiled as he liked her photo, then quietly saved the image. And beneath her caption, he left a comment. Good night, sweet dreams.